Our speaker will be Samantha Garrett, and she'll be talking about filling the watch to warning gap, use of warrant on forecast system with the 12 May 2022 Derecho. Go ahead, Samantha.
Thanks so much, Mike. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Samantha Garrett. I'm a meteorologist at the Weather Forecast Office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. My co-authors on this project were Kyle Weiser, one of our lead forecasters, and Phil Schumacher, our Sioux. So as mentioned, I'm going to discuss our May 12th, 2022 Derecho. Although this was our first Derecho of 2022, it was the second in less than 6 months for our office. We were also a part of the December 15th, 2021 event. And our second Derecho of 2022 will move through on July 5th. So a little bit of a busy time for us. So the focus for our talk, which if you were at AMS and attended my session, this will be a very similar talk. If not, welcome. Our focus will be how can WoFS be used to enhance messaging. In particular for this event, we utilized WoFS to choose a PDS tornado, or excuse me, a PDS severe thunderstorm watch over a tornado watch, and that was done in collaboration with SPC. We also used it a bit in our social media and our partner messaging. Particularly in warning operations, it provided another confidence boost, especially after convective initiation, to help us push our warnings from a base tag of 60 miles per hour to 70 plus miles per hour. And we also want to take a look at how could we at Sioux Falls also have done a better job of utilizing WoFS in our messaging before and during the event. This was one of the first times that we had WoFS over our area. So we didn't really have, and still relatively don't have much experience in using it. And it was a struggle keeping up with all of the updated runs, given our staffing and the focus on the unfolding event. So just as a refresher, I have this radar loop here. I'll let it play through a couple of times. So we'll watch our first line of storms, the Derecho, move through there from about 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. is when this loop runs through. And toward the latter half of the loop, you'll take note of the second line of storms forming down in eastern Nebraska. And that will actually be our second line of storms that will impact our area later in the evening. For the Derecho, the first warning in our CWA was issued at 3:16 Central Time. And the last warning for this portion of the event was issued at 6:11 p.m. We issued a total of 16 severes and 2 tornado warnings during this portion of the event. So the first question, do we use a PDS severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch? So taking a look at the 19Z run of the WoFS on the left, it showed that the damaging wind threat was much higher than the tornado threat in our area when we contrasted the 90th percentile maximum 10-meter gust with the 90th percentile of the maximum 0 to 2 kilometer updraft helicity. So this boosted our confidence in going with a PDS severe versus a tornado watch. And there was actually a tornado watch issued for parts of northeastern South Dakota, up towards Aberdeen's area, which is where those higher values of updraft helicity reside. So as mentioned, we did end up with a PDS severe thunderstorm watch, and the WoFS data was the catalyst for that for both us and SPC. So we issued that severe thunderstorm watch at 3:26, and then it was followed by the tornado watch at 3:48 for northeastern and east central South Dakota, as I mentioned, where that UH was higher. But here's a look at our severe thunderstorm watch. And as you can see, we did have mention in the graphic there of scattered hail up to 2-inch size and widespread gusts to 105 miles per hour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to step through a couple of hours of the 90th percentile wind gusts, and it'll run through 23 UTC for each of these images. The yellow box, which will kind of move as I step through these slides, right now it is down in the lower left-hand corner, shows where convection was roughly at the time of the WoFS run initialization. So at 17Z, it really hadn't started too much yet, but was starting to go across far southern Nebraska and western Kansas, not really on this map extent. So even the 17Z run was already picking up on the potential for wind gusts via the 90th percentile greater than 65 to 70 knots. 18Z, not too much has changed. The area has shifted just a little bit. Convection is continuing to go across Nebraska, and we're continuing to watch it, but not too much change. I'll step back here. So not too much change besides a slight westward shift between 17Z and 18Z. Now 19Z is when we start to see a significant change and an upward tick in the potential. Our potential for wind gusts, the 90th percentile has increased to being closer to 80, 85, and even pushing 90 knots. It's a much larger area of greater than 50 knots, and it's a much faster progression to the north. So I will step back here again so you can see 18Z versus 19Z. So again, much faster progression, shift to the west, and has increased in the high end potential. So as the event and the radar started to evolve, we did actually do this radar post. This was one of the posts we put together during the event at 3:47, showing where we were expecting the line of storms to move through. And we mentioned that an intense line of storms will race northeast into eastern South Dakota through 6 p.m. quicker than previously expected. We reiterated that it was a dangerous situation and for folks to please check the weather if they had any plans and have a plan to take cover. We also emphasized in our graphic, which I put here in this little blue box, and we did actually have it highlighted in that red font when we posted it on social media, that there was the potential for 90+ mile-per-hour winds, and that was indeed the main hazard with this. So how can we improve using WoFS? We want to use WoFS to improve our messaging through NWS chat updates to partners in the media, additional social media posts to the public through Twitter and Facebook, and more quickly utilizing the enhanced wording or tags in severe thunderstorm warnings. So I've already showed the graphic on the left. That was the, or I showed the 90th percentile. These are the max paintballs. So on the left is 19Z, on the right is 20Z. So we're continuing to see that uptick in the potential, as well as now a shift to the east through 0Z. So again, this just continues to uptick, and it has a more narrow corridor of those greater than 90 knot gusts. So again, up to 105 miles per hour. So we're just continuing to watch the trends. And this is something we really could have latched onto. And if you look closely, you can notice the hint down across Nebraska of that second line of storms becoming a bit more prominent down in here. So this is a proposed update that we could have done to social media and NWS chat, given the 20Z run of the WoFS. So mentioning that damaging winds are already ongoing. By this time, we were starting to see a couple of sporadic reports. So we could have highlighted the area based on the 20 UTC run of the WoFS that had the greatest risk of 90+ mile-per-hour winds, and just reiterated to folks that this is a dangerous situation and be ready to act quickly if the warning is issued. I also here have an example of what we could have used in NWS chat to our partners and to the media folks, basically reiterating that the latest model simulations show the potential for 90 to 100+ mile-per-hour winds in the corridor from Charles, Mix, and Bonham counties towards Brookings and Kingsbury counties, and then listed some of the towns that could have been impacted through 6 p.m. So one challenge we had here at Sioux Falls is with warnings and tags. And as the radar operator, it definitely was a challenge. So through 4:40 p.m., we had kept the severe thunderstorm tags to 70 mile per hour due to limited reports. Any reports that we had gotten at that time over 70 miles per hour were really sporadic and from sources that tend to have a high bias in our experience. So we weren't fully confident in those reports. We knew the potential was there, but we were kind of watching things and just kept it at 70 because of that. Phil Schumacher, our Sioux, and Alex Ferguson, who's a forecaster at WFO Amarillo, have done a study, and I believe guest speaker talks on this study, looking at tags and warnings. And so looking at our tags, around 3% of all of Sioux Falls' warnings for damaging winds had an 80+ mile per hour tag between 2010 and 2021, with only 2 warnings during that time frame having a 90+ mile per hour tag. So we were kind of keeping an eye on things. One thing we did do is after I had issued the first warning, I kept the 60 mile per hour tag, but the WoFS allowed us to have that confidence to go ahead and use 70 as the floor, and then just keeping an eye on things, and as we got reports, going up from there. So again, ways to improve on that could be the potential was there. The ensemble max gusts showed us the potential was there with widespread indicated 80+ mile per hour gust potential, and that 100+ mile per hour wind gusts were not out of the question. So using those 80 to 90 mile per hour tags as the storms moved into South Dakota right off the bat may have helped highlight the extreme threat with this line of storms and started getting people's attention a bit quicker with the WIA tags. So this run of the WoFS, the 20 UTC run, would have been available around 3:45, which could have helped us around 4 make those decisions. So as mentioned, we did not just deal with the Derecho that day. We had the Derecho move through, and then the second line of storms that I highlighted earlier moved through the kind of eastern part of our CWA. So we have the 90th percentile gusts for 1 hour based on the 22 UTC WoFS, which really highlights that second line of storms well. It does show that these would likely be severe, with the potential for the 90th percentile showing gusts greater than 55, 60, 65 knots. So that was something else that we were going to have to transition our messaging, because the western edge of this line of storms was going to impact areas that had already seen severe winds earlier that afternoon. So here's a very similar proposed update to social media and NWS chat that we could have done. Again, highlighting with the red text there, the damaging wind potential of 60 to 80 miles per hour, and mentioning that this could impact areas that had already seen damaging winds earlier in the day, and reinforcing that in NWS chat to our partners, mentioning that we're watching the line of thunderstorms in northeastern and east central Nebraska that's moving towards Sioux City, with severe winds of 60 to 80 miles per hour possible, and that this would move towards Sioux Falls, and that some places that had those damaging gusts earlier could see them again through 8 p.m. So we put this loop together to kind of show the 20Z WoFS with the warnings. These are just severe thunderstorm warnings, and our wind LSRs. So I'll let this play a couple of times, but you can really see that the WoFS did a good job with really highlighting the highest winds through this event. So one challenge we did have was staffing, especially in such a large scale event like this. Although the tornado threat was low, we still wanted to have a dedicated TOR radar operator in our operations. Typically, if we're dealing with any sort of linear QLCS could have quick spin ups on the line. We tend to split with severe and TOR, and we'll sometimes segment with 2 severe weather or 2 severe thunderstorm warning operators. So I was working the severe warnings and had one of our newer forecasters shadowing me, helping me keep track of the warnings, count counties, that sort of thing. We had our Sioux, and one of our lead forecasters was working with the mesoanalysis side of things. Phil, during part of this event, was also looking at the RMA support. We had another lead forecaster who was second eyes on radar and handling the couple of tornado warnings that we did end up issuing. We had 3 people handling phones and LSRs. We had our MIC was basically our PIO, with our WCM handling other media and EM calls. Our lead, who was working on mesoanalysis and grids, was also helping with social media, as well as SPC collaboration. And then our Sioux was also handling the event and ops coordinator position. So lots of people doing double duty. Although we had 9 people during this event, it quickly got very busy to where, like I said, we didn't have time to keep up with the WoFS data. We were having trouble keeping up with the Central Region RMA support. All 8 of our workstations and AWIPs were taken over by folks who were doing the different roles. And once we started getting damage reports, we were absolutely inundated with phone calls. And the other really interesting thing, which I will show a loop of this derecho later, was we had been in drought mode and had very little rainfall for much of the spring. So these strong winds were kicking up so much dust along the leading edge of the winds that everyone was just seeing this giant dust cloud coming towards them. So we were getting a lot of calls about that as well. Highly unusual. So in summary from this event, WoFS is a critical tool in the toolbox for enhancing confidence in messaging high-end wind events and also in warnings. We hope for more frequent data and runs to allow our staff to become more comfortable using the data. Like I said, this was really the first time that we had a chance to dive in deep on WoFS over our CWA. From NSSL research from Dr. Patrick Skinner shows the performance of WoFS improving after convective initiation, making it more accurate. And that really highlights how the use of WoFS in operations decision-making and messaging can increase once we see those storms form. And then if you're looking at the potential for these large-scale high-end wind events and want to use WoFS to assist in your decision-making and your messaging, make sure you have the staff to do so, including keeping up with that data as the event unfolds. Like I said, we had 9 folks here, but with so many reports and partner requests, it quickly became difficult to monitor WoFS and keep up with that. Another thing that we're looking at is looking into using another tool, the hotspot notification tool, in tandem with NWS chat for partner notification, and using that hotspot tool to kind of tailor notifications to maybe a couple of county EMs saying, hey, the highest winds are expected to be in a corridor, including your counties, giving them that extra heads up. And then also one other thing is that once WoFS becomes operational, we'll be able to share images like the ones I've shown here in Slack. Now that we're headed towards NWS Chat 2.0, and we'll be able to share GIFs and images and our analysis directly with our partners other than just our words and social media posts. That's much quicker than sending an email to everyone. It allows us to work with our media partners. So that's something we're also looking forward to, is enhancing our messaging as we transition to NWS Chat 2.0. So I will let this loop play. As I mentioned, this is a loop from our office looking to the west as the derecho moves in. Our ASOS is about a mile south of the office, and we had a 63-mile-per-hour wind gust with numerous 80-mile-per-hour reports across our CWA. We had power surges here, but Aberdeen was ready to take over, so we appreciate them for that. So I'll let this loop play one more time, and I thank you for your time.
Great job, Samantha. If anyone has any questions, please raise their hands. And if you could also put a question in chat if you have a question as well. So.
And if you think of any questions later, feel free to, I put our contact information up here. Just feel free to reach out anytime.